Let me start by telling you a story. One cold Sunday morning, my coach's face fell when he saw that only a few people showed up for a planned football match. Me and my friends were highly disappointed. So we decided to wake people up. We picked our pots and pans and started banging them around the boarding houses. I had so much fun annoying my housemates. But sooner I realized how traumatizing it can be for someone in their deep sleep. So I was ready to get yelled and bashed on. But what happened next at lunch took me aback. One of my friends revealed that they were so scared of the noise that they thought it wasn't a lockdown or a fire alarm or any sort of emergency, but rather a Maasai attack. The trauma of racist and ignorant comments made me judge them too quickly. But when I took a step back and sat and thought about it, I realized that if someone said that a year ago, I wouldn't be equally offended. Because a year ago, I was the one who was quarreling with my Marathi teacher about why do I have to learn this useless language when I can learn something more useful, such as French and German. From there to standing in front of you, I've came a long way. So please bear with me. Going back to the comment, it made me realize another thing. That the colonized nations and colonial powers, people in them, are equal victims of colonial mindset. Which means that I am equally responsible for looking down upon my culture as much as the Westerners are. But you might say that mental colonization is a heavy word to use. But I think we are mentally colonized when we think of a Western household, when we think of a modern society. We are mentally colonized when my friends invest loads of money to build a bougie British accent. We are mentally colonized when there are parts of textbooks today that say what colonization brought to us. And hence, it is an important conversation we should have. Today's TED topic is about building bridges. But I revolt against this idea. I call for the emergence of burning bridges. Because the bridges we have today are not on the right foundation. They're on the foundation of colonial mindset, which has this idea that the Western culture is better than anyone else. So building on something and following a bridge that has these wrong foundation, we need to burn these bridges. Come along with me to understand why. Let me share my experience of childhood. Growing up in India is an interesting experience, believe me. On one hand, nationalism is at its peak, while on the other, I learned to count in English before anything else. I learned to read English literature and only sang English nursery rhymes and nothing else. But soon I came across Sudha Murty. Sudha Murty is this English author who's trying to put across English traditional stories in simple language. But it was too late when I came across her, because this little D had already built this idea that her culture was too uncool, too not interesting to write books upon. This is what you call Neo-orientalism in literature. Neo-orientalism is when Western authors oversimplify one culture in their writing. You can call Eat, Pray and Love and Shantaram by David Roberts as Neo-orientalist literature. They both have this idea of India as a place where you get spiritual awakening amidst the chaos of slums. We all love these stories, and it's not like they're showing something untrue. The problem is they are just showing a story which is very single, which doesn't show any nuance, and it oversimplifies the Indian culture. Do you remember reading a piece or seeing a documentary where Africa is seen as a place of wild animals, sceneries, and whatnot, and also a place of wars? And that's it. This is what happens when colonial mindset is still very rooted in us, gives right to Neo-orientalism. I still remember the little me singing, "London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady." I always wondered that why doesn't India have a London Bridge, or why there is no fair lady? This is what happens to kids who grew up with this mental colonization as effect in their literature and in their academics. Let me tell you another example. I have been a big fan of yoga. I've been practicing yoga since I was 13. And now that it's getting more global recognition, I feel great. But one day while I was scrolling my social media, I came across this. Beer yoga. Before I could judge, I went on internet and tried to understand what they're talking about. But I must say, beer yoga is culture appropriation. It talks about drinking beer while doing yoga, and I don't understand how. Because yoga is about aligning your mind, body, and soul, and I don't understand how you can do that under the influence of alcohol. Every culture invites others to appreciate, to learn, and to exchange. But beer yoga is simply not that. There is this thin line between appreciation and appropriation. Appropriation is this very interesting topic, which I would not like to go in, but it happens when there's this shallow understanding, this lack of knowledge and this lack of respect for one particular culture. And I call beer yoga as culture appropriation. A few years ago, I would have just said, oh, how crazy Western people are and how interesting this is. But now I have the courage, with all my understanding, to call it as appropriation. UWC has been a place where I understood beer yoga is appropriation, and where I've understood London Bridge is falling down has had a deep impact on my mindset. But something interesting that happened on a Zanzibar beach is also taken me very aback. When I saw my European friends trying hard to get a tan on the beach, I was so confused. I asked them so many questions because for me, while I was growing up, my mom always said to cover up myself so I don't get dark. She means I don't get tan. When I remember when my friends and me used to compare our skin colors to see who is lighter, to see who is better, and who is prettier. This shows how colonization has deep effects everywhere, especially in beauty standards. The skin lightening industry in Asia is worth $7.8 billion. 7.8. At least 50% of Asians use one skin lightening product. I remember Fair and Lovely. Everyone I know used Fair and Lovely at some point. It has this idea of making you look fair, and hence making you look lovely, and hence making you look better, and hence making you look Western. And I don't understand how we are talking about having bridges, because I simply think that there is no bridge existing. It's just the romanticization of the other end and trying to become more Western. I hope through all of these examples, you have realized of how today's globalized society is not truly global. Mental colonization has its effect everywhere, every choice you make. From the choice of song you want to listen to the industry you want to invest in. It's everywhere. But does this mean that we should confine our cultures and not give it exposure? Does this mean that little D should have never learned English and never read Harry Potter? I truly am grateful for doing those things, because those are the things why I stand here. The problem is not the practices, but the problem is the kind of mindset we build through them, the kind of mental colonization that is perpetuated through these practices. And hence, we need to redefine them. So how about today's new generation takes up this task to start on a new foundation? A foundation where there is no culture that is put in hierarchy, where there's no one better or inferior than any other, but we all are considered as equals. Believe me, I'm not here for a racial rant, no matter how passionate I might sound, but this is not a racial rant, because I believe that every culture has something to improve. Every culture has some faults. But this doesn't mean that we should think that the Western culture is the default better. So, for the things I've learned in my culture appreciation journey are these. That me and my future generation would learn my native language, not by force, but to understand my art, my people better. Me and my future generation would learn about why do we celebrate the festivals we celebrate, not for an Instagram post, but so that we can understand our culture better. And many other small things that we can inculcate in everyday practices, just so our culture makes more sense in our everyday lives. I'm no expert here standing and explaining you why culture appreciation is important. I think I'm learning myself every day and understanding its importance every day. But it is about our own journey, our own task of doing it. There is no pass or fail in the journey of culture appreciation. We all choose different paths and all have different strategies of doing it. And hence, there shall be no judgment and there shall be no criteria for it. There have been a few ideas that have been always looked down upon, always been shamed, and always considered inferior as. Do you remember witchcraft as an African practice that has been looked down upon forever, since colonization? But then, how about we sit and redefine these ideas, we relearn about them without any previous lens? Because they do deserve another better understanding. What happened in the past is not your fault, not my fault, or we can't do anything about it. But how we see it now is our responsibility. So how about this? How about we relearn our culture, reconstruct our mindsets, and rebuild our bridges, so that those bridges are strong enough and real enough to call equal. Thank you.